Have you ever thought about how you'd like to go out? I mean, like when it's all said and done, you take your last breath. Have you ever thought about what you want that story to be like? Well, I can't imagine a greater going out story than that of Stephen. So this month we're reading through the book of Acts and we're up to chapter 7, and it talks about Stephen's last moments. And so I don't want to do a spoiler alert here, so if you haven't read chapter 7 of Acts, I'd encourage you to pause the video, go and read that. You can find it in the comment section, and then I'll just have a couple of comments I want to make about it that I think is interesting. So if you're still watching, I'm assuming that means you've read chapter 7 of Acts. And so this chapter is Stephen speaking before the council in Jerusalem. And most of the chapter is his speech. Now, this is a really interesting read for those of you that want to kind of know what's in the Old Testament if you've never read it. And it kind of has multiple purposes in that sense, that it's probably one of the best synopses, I'm not sure how to say that. It's one of the best synopses for the Old Testament, I think. It's brief in the sense that it covers many hundreds of years very quickly, and it's well said. And so Stephen goes through this synopsis of basically the history of the nation of Israel. And so it's all, I'm imagining that the council would be listening and they would agree. They'd be like, yeah, that's true. Oh, and yeah, that's true. Oh, and that's true as well. They'd probably agree with most of what he said until he gets to the end. And then he calls them some names and he explains that they killed the Messiah, and they sort of just lose their mind. Their wigs become unglued and they begin to foam at the mouth or whatever, So they take him out, and he is basically stoned to death. And what's really interesting is the description of what he sees while he's being stoned. It says that heaven opens up and he could see Jesus, and he sort of calls out to him. And it's this really interesting take on what a martyr goes through. And so what's important about the stoning of Stephen is that it is the springboard for everything that happens after this in the book of Acts. And so now what we need to remember is that at this point there are still Jews who have become believers, and they're from all over the world, and they're in Jerusalem. They're there probably still from the last Passover, and they're part of the congregation, part of the church. And so this stoning of Stephen is going to mark a beginning of a period of persecution. And so what we're going to see in the next chapters is the result of Stephen's stoning. And what seemed like a really treacherous, terrible thing actually will turn out in the story to be really important as we go on in the next chapters. So, couple of questions to consider in the comment section. How did his death strike you? I mean, what does that do for you emotionally? For me, after I read it, I said, wow. It was very striking. So in the comment section, let's talk a little bit about sort of just our reaction to Stephen's death that's recorded here. And then in sort of a second fashion, imagine martyrs today. And if any of you have stories of martyrs that you're aware of, link us to those or share them in the comment section. But let's think a little bit about what it means to be a martyr in today's world and why that type of thing still happens. So that's my video for today. Thanks for watching. Tomorrow is Sunday, so Monday we'll be looking at chapter 8 of Acts. So hope you have a great Sunday, and we'll see you later.